thank Hashem that we're able to learn. And schus of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Should be for Shleima for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Menucha Lester, and Avram Rishal ben Sarah. We're on Hey Amid Aleph, towards the bottom. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. 3 lines from the bottom. Yeah, we're talking about making sure that people kayanim don't become tamei because there's a grave that was unmarked. Said you have to mark off the graves. What's the source for that? So we gave sources from different places, from Cheskel and other places. Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, Kol hasamar chaysav. Anyone that hashamar chaysav, anyone that appraises his path. He checks out what he's going to do. He's careful. He's prudent. He sees he merits to have the salvation of Hashem. B'sam derech means that he puts his path, but b'sham derech means that he evaluates, he appraises his path. Arena b'yashalikim, he'll see the salvation of Hashem. Rabbi Yanai Havaleyahu Talmida the Kol Yom Avamakshali. Rabbi Yanai had a student that every day would ask him difficult questions. Yeah, sounds like a good student. Shabbat the Rigla Le'avamakshali. But when all the guests were there on the Shabbos of the Regal of the big speech, so he didn't ask any questions. So Kari Aleh, Rabbi Yanai said about him, V'sam derech harena b'yashalikim, that he appraises his way, he sees in the salvation of Hashem, and as he chooses when to ask the questions, he shouldn't embarrass Rabbi Yanai. Okay, now the Gemara is going to tell us about marking off graves in areas where there's a lost grave, or when you see a marking on the ground, what does that mean? Like, where exactly is the grave? Big discussion. It says like this: Tan Rabbanan. The Rabbanan taught in a brisa. Ein mitzainin loyal kazayas minames v'loyal etzem kasaira v'loyal davar sheina mitame ba'ayel. If there is a kazayas, an olive size of flesh of a corpse, somewhere in the ground, you don't put a marker over that area, nor do you put a marker over an area that has a bone the size of a barley. And you don't put a marker on anything that is not metame ba'ayel. Metame ba'ayel means that if there would be a tree over it and you would walk under that tree, even if you didn't come in contact with the actual flesh or bone or corpse, you would still be tamei. That's tumas oyel. So if there's no tumas oyel, there's no tzion. There's no tzion means there's no mark. What's the marker? They would actually put lime, like they do on the fields to show where the 10-yard or whatever, the 20-yard. That's like a thing on the grass. The white lines. Yeah. They would put the white line. Yeah. Now, where exactly would it go along the form of the body? And is it directly on top or on the sides? The Gemara is going to discuss that. It's very important. But they would pour this lime on the ground, and that would be a marker. So we're only marking off things that have tumas oil. And apparently, kazayas minames and etzem kasaira does not have tumas oil. It's only tumas maga. Tuma is impurity, oil is in a tent, and maga is contact. So it seems like it only has contact tuma. Those sizes are smaller. Aval, however, mitzainin ala shedra, if the spine of a corpse is there, you do need to mark that off. Bal gulgailas, if the skull is there. Al roiv binyan, that means probably the Rashi tells us it's the big bones. If it's even if it's not a lot of the bones, but it's the big bones like the legs or Well, Rav Minyan, or if it's the majority of the bones. How many bones are there? I don't know how many bones there are. Yeah, there's 200, according to the scientists, I think there's 206 bones in an adult body. And in a baby, there's 300 or something. And I think the 248 comes probably at around bar mitzvah because the bones fuse. They like the skull, comes together, they become one. That's probably where we got the 248. Anyway, if it's roiv minyan ames, even if they're not large bones, in the foot, there's like a bunch of bones that are tiny. So if they add up, so that would be also something that needs to be marked off. They don't have to mark off something that everyone knows that that's a grave. They don't have to pour lime over a cemetery. That we know that that's a cemetery. But if something is a doubt, that needs to be marked off. Let's what are the sveikas? What are the doubts? Schachis, the Gemara is going to tell us. Schachis are if there's a tree that's going over a right? It's going over a cemetery possibly, and the question is, where is the grave, under which branch? So you would have to mark off which branch would be the problem. Uprais are stones that's protruding from the wall, and also you want to know which stone is the one that's actually directly over the corpse. That should be marked off. Ubeisapras. Beisapras is a field that there's a grave somewhere in it, and yeah, we'll see exactly. The Gemara is going to discuss that. Very interesting. You don't put the lime directly on top of it. Why? Because by the time the person sees it, it's already too late. He's already on it, right? So it can't be directly on top of it because that would be a waste. By the time you get there, you already, yeah. What do they do? Something wet paint or something. You can't put it down the whole way. You have to put it before you touch it. Not this is going to be too late. Okay. The other issue is you don't want to put it too far away, because all of that area is going to be lost for Kayanim. You're making more. You don't want to turn the whole Eretz Yisrael. They say, oh, just to be cautious. So you don't want to lose land. So it should be next to it, but not on top of it. Now the Gemara has a question. One of the things that's not metame ba'il, we said, was kazayas min ames. Kazayas min ames ain't a metame ba'il. Olive-sized flesh of a corpse doesn't give off tuma in under a tent. But Tanan, it says Tanya, but it's Tanan. It's taught in a Mishnah. Elu shematamim ba'il. The following do give off tuma in a tent. They do give spread impurity. One of them is kazayas min ames. Yeah, this is a difficult question. Kazayas min ames, olive-sized flesh gives off tuma. Amar Rav Papa, hacha bekazayas mitzumtzum askinan. Rav Papa says we're dealing with an exact kazayas. Listen to this. The safe mechzer chaser, mutav yisrafol of truma v'kachim l'fishav al yisrafol of loilam. You have to recognize the flesh is going to decompose. If I put a marker on flesh that's exactly a kazayas, in a little bit it's going to be less than a kazayas, and then it's not going to give off tuma. If the marker's there, the marker lasts forever. That lime is going to be there; it's going to stay there. But if it's exactly the size of an olive, so it's going to decompose, and then it won't give off tuma. But if the marker's there, it's going to give off tuma forever. So he says, better I should burn temporarily. People should actually come in contact with flesh and have to burn the truma because of that, because it became contaminated. What's going to happen? Someone's going to walk over there. He's going to be holding truma. He's going to say, "Oy, look, there's a piece over here. I can't believe it. I made my truma tummy. Okay, I'll have to burn it. But at least it won't be a permanent thing, for Dairis that there's a corpse over there, because there isn't.
Why should there even be like a kazayas portion of somebody's flesh unburied? They should bury the whole body, unless they're on like a battlefield.
Right.
It's not about the whole body.
Right, yeah, even a whole body, but even a kazayas would make someone
Yeah, we're going to see soon that one of the things that they would do is that they would bury, they would put the body in in a cave and let it decompose. Then they would take the bones and then they would put it in.
But you have to
bury
bury
the bones.
the day after or the day of.
Yeah, but that was considered a type of burial.
Oh.
Yeah, they would collect the bones and put them in. So, and sometimes they would actually move a grave for whatever reason. And if that would happen somewhere along the way, it could be something fell. Sometimes there was a miscarriage, a miscarriage or a stillborn, which needed to be buried, and it was very small, and it was along the way, whatever. There's all types of, or it was a laboratory.
Once, if a body in a grave, once it decomposes in a cemetery, then that grave is no longer matami. A Kohen can walk in a grave where the body already decomposed.
Yeah. What about the bones, though? You mean with the bones also decomposing?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did the bones decompose? Or did they?
I thought so.
We'll see soon. Ask again towards the end of the page. Let's see what it looks like. All right.
Except for that bone, the loose bone, I guess.
Except for the loose. If you ate malava malka.
Which bone is it?
The loose. There's a bone they say in the back of the neck that gets fed only once a week. Yeah.
True. Such a bone.
I guess so. And because death came because they ate from the Eitz Hadas. When did they eat from Eitz Hadas? On Friday. So it didn't feed the luz. The luz only eats malav malka. So that's why the luz never decomposes. Okay. That's Rav Papa's teretz. Now we go back to Vele and Asfekas. We have to discuss what are the doubts that you said we need to put lime over to mark off where it is. Schachis the price. It's a schach and the price. What is this schachis? Schachis, the Gemara says, is ilana mesach alaretz. It's a tree that's giving shade, and the shade is going over Tumah. Price, you don't know which branch it is, but whatever the case is, that has to be marked off. Price, what is that? That's avanim pruis hayotzim together. These are stones that are protruding from the wall. Prua. Remember we had the word para roish, that like his locks of hair are growing out wild. So roishei perua. So that would be prices, these stones that are just protruding from a wall, and you don't know under which stone, different parts of the wall. You don't know which stone really has the tumah under it. Beis HaPras. That was the third thing that needed to be marked off. Right? In Metzainen, we said we said things that didn't need to be marked off. And then what does need to be marked off was the Shedra and the Gilgailas and the Sveikas, which are Schachis and Beis HaPras. Okay. Schachis, price, and Beis HaPras, these are the Sveikas. So what is a Beis HaPras? A house of Pras. An area of Pras. Kiddetanana was started in the Mishnah. Chirish as a keper. If there is a grave in a field and someone goes and plows that field, Harioisa Beis HaPras. The whole field has bones that are spread out, distributed all around the field. But Kama Waisa, how how large would be the area of a Beis HaPras? M'loi mana meya ama. I think the mana is the plow, as long as the plow would go in one row, I think it would go, and then it would turn around and come back. So the area that it would go one row and then turn around and come back, that would be all a Beis HaPras. Okay, so Beis HaPras is something that needs to be marked off because there's a grave that has been plowed into there, and a kohen, would go there, become tamei. The Gemara says, 1 second. Beis HaPras mi metame ba'oil. Is a Beis HaPras, this area that has a grave plowed, that's going to give off tumah in a tent without even contact? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. We have a statement from Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Yeah, I can't imagine someone doing this, but he says that a person can crouch down on the ground and crawl by blowing on the soil and make his way through a Beis HaPras. And if there would have been over there a small bone, it would have got blown away because he was blowing it. Yeah, I would have used a tree blower, but he's using his mouth. He's going to blow his way through this. Every he'll be tired at the end. But apparently, there's no tumas oil. Apparently, there's no tumas oil. There's only tumas maga. And he's blowing away. He's not going to touch and going to come in contact with it. What are you telling me? A Beis HaPras needs to be marked off because it's tumas oil. He's just blowing in front of him. This is a heter of how to get through.
Taking 4 steps.
So look at what it says. Rav Yehuda Barami Mishmedu Lamar Beis HaPras Shenida Shtar. Oh, this is another question. Another question is that once a Beis HaPras has been trampled upon, so then it's tar. I thought it's metame ba'oil. What do you mean? Once it's been trampled upon, it's tar? How did it become tar? Amar Rav Papa says like kasha. Kan besada she'avad bakever, kan besada she'nechash bakever. So far, we have 2 types of Beis HaPras. We have one type of Beis HaPras where there's a grave somewhere in there. We don't know where it is. That Beis HaPras is metame ba'oil. There's an actual grave there. There's another type of Beis HaPras where there's a grave where we knew where it was. The only problem is that someone came in and plowed it. And now we don't know where the bones are spread out. So if the bones are spread out, you can come in and you can blow your way through it. And if it was trampled, then the little bones that got spread around etzem kasaira, the bone the size of a barley, is metame b'maga. But it's no problem because you can blow those bones to the side and it's fine. But if the grave is buried, if there is a corpse that's buried there, you just don't know if it's here, there. So that is going to be metame ba'oil.
Can't you also create like a partition within a cemetery also?
Yeah. Yeah. To mark off where the graves are.
Yeah, like you fence off like a walkway.
Right. Now the Gemara has a question. Is that called the Beis HaPras? If it's plowed over? What's the days over there? Oh, Sha'avad Bakever. Question is, which one is it asking on? There's a different version over here. So the Gemara says, yes. V'hatanana, we even have a Mishnah. Where's the Mishnah in Olos? It says, Shleisha Beis HaPrasein. There are 3 types of Beis HaPras. It's funny, the Gemara has a question when it's Mamish Mishnah. There's 3 types of Beis HaPras. What are the 3? Sada shenevad bakever, Sada shenechash bakever, and v'sadei boichen. A field that the grave is lost. We don't know exactly where the grave is. Then there's a field that the grave was plowed. And then there's a sadei boichen. Whatever the case is, the 2 that we were discussing are a Beis HaPras. The grave is lost or the grave was plowed over. That's a Beis HaPras. My stay boichen. What's that 3rd one that you mentioned? Stay boichen. Rabbi Shua Barabba Mishmei Deula. Oh, we have 2 people here in the name of Ula. Before we had Rabbi Yehuda Barami, Mishmei Deula. And we had Rabbi Shua Barabba, Mishmei Deula. Interesting. Omar, he says, Sadasha Maftirim B'Mesim. Yeah, what does it mean, Sadasha Maftirim B'Mesim? Apparently, they didn't do this handoff the way we would do it today. They would bring a body from one area to be buried in another area. So the people from the first area would dig up the body or take it out of the cave, and they would bring it to the meeting point. And then the people from another area would meet them and take it to wherever it was going. Now, it's possible that they would put it down and they would walk away and wait for the other people to show up. Other people would either show up or not show up. So, and someone may walk by and say, oh my gosh, a mamish, a body right here in the field, it has to be buried. It's a meis mitzvah. And he doesn't know that it's in middle of, this was in middle of, in journey. So it could be, and even when they came, it could be that they left the bone. When they would come, they would take the okay. So that's Sadashim Aftirim B'Mesim, that handoff point. That's called stay beichen. Why is it beichen? Because the family would come to get at the body, and they would be crying when they would take the. Okay, there's other versions of this Gemara, but
Weeper's field.
Weeper's field.
How come? You don't say there's a person who's buried in the field. They wasn't buried in the cemetery, but there was a person. And now the field got dug up. So the vast majority of the land doesn't have dead bodies.
Right.
So why don't we say this that this area doesn't have and you can walk through all you want.
Yeah, midirabanan, we say that it's tamei. Basic process tamei midirabanan. Maybe because it's a rishus hayachid. Safik tamei b'rishus hayachid is tamei. But I don't know if is that a din daraisa or a din darabanan? What's the first sugi in Nida?
Don't we also have a situation that we had something where like if below like below a few something, then it does.
Yeah, there's a
within,
right.
It's not a town well, right?
Right.
So you have two statements. First of all, we know there was a body here. Now
Right.
And also because it was dug up from
Right.
under the ground, now it may be at ground level. We don't have to
Right.
worry about it again.
Right.
So I would think that there's enough stakes here. You can say, the majority of the place you're walking is not a problem.
Right. Question is if you view that as two sfekas. This is a big sugya. I don't remember it well. Naftali, I don't know if you remember this. How svek sveka, you remember Simon Kufyud? How does svek sveka work? It's very complicated. Ramosha, maybe you remember this. There's one way of looking at it that, what do you mean? There's only one suffix. Is there tuma right here or not? The other way, I was like, 1 second. Even if there's tuma here, maybe there's a hollow underneath the ground and it's not tuma ritzutza, and maybe it's this. Or I can just view the whole thing as 1 second. I only have one suffix. What is it? What's going on here? So yeah, I'm not sure how to make things into svek or not. Okay. The time of my what's going on over here? Why is there tuma here? Amar Ravimi mishum yush bailam nagaba. There's yush bailam. Maybe the owners of this corpse, means the relatives that were coming to take it, maybe they gave up on it, and maybe they dropped something, or like we explained. But now the Gemara says, the way we were explaining it is that only the Beis HaPras, you have to mark off a Beis HaPras. But which type of Beis HaPras? The type of Beis HaPras that's going to be Metame Ba'ayel. And that would be only the Beis HaPras that has a grave there that we don't know where it is. But if it has a grave that was plowed, then that's not Metame Ba'ayel. So we're asking, so that one doesn't need a tzion, it doesn't need to be marked off. But Tanya, you have a brisa. Matzasada mitzuyenes. If you find a field that's marked off, now the problem here is that you describe the field as a field that's marked off, and then you do a mativa, and you don't know what's going on there. Yesh ba'ilana is if there are trees in it. Now the way it would work, a field that has trees, is that the owner would have come and plowed the field because it's good for the trees to turn over the soil in the field so that whatever it does, the water should get in, the fertilizer should get in. They're supposed to plow around the roots to hoe. So if there are trees there, but you do a shenechesh bakever. So we know that the field was plowed, and it's not mitama ba'il because it was plowed. Fine. But our problem is that it said Sada Mitziyeneth, that it was marked off. How was it marked off if it was plowed? Let's go further. Ain ba'ilanis, if there are no trees there. But Yadua she'avad bakever. Then it was just it was lost. There was a grave that was lost in there, but not that it was plowed. Because who would plow a field that doesn't have trees in it? And what do they plow it for? Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Rabbi Yehuda says, you can't just make decisions unless there's an older person or a Talmud that knows what's going on, that he tells us what actually happened there. You can't just say, oh, this was plowed, this was not plowed. This just based on the fact that there's a tree. So our question is, why is it Mitziyanis? Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa explains. Rav Papa, by the way, if you notice, Rav Papa answers all our questions. Whenever there's a question, Rav Papa comes in and says, this is talking about this is talking about that. That's like he resolves the conciliator. Resolves all the issues. Yeah. It's the Talmud of Abai and Rava. Rav Papa Kitanye Besada Shabbat Bakever. That brisa that's talking about that you have find a field that's mitzuyenes. And the question is it plowed or not? Turned out that originally there was a grave that was lost. It's Ainua. So they marked it off, which is what you're supposed to do to a field that has a grave that's lost. And then later on, this is what we did. And then if there's trees in it, then we know that the field that had a grave that was lost was also plowed. If there's no trees, then it's just that old field that we had, and that's the reason why it was marked off. So it was marked off not because it had a field, it had a grave that was plowed. It was marked off because it had a grave that was lost. The question is what happened afterwards. Okay. Now the Gemara says, yeah, gavoy means inside, and broi means outside. How do you know where exactly the area is? You see some markings here around trees or something. How do you know where exactly the marking is telling you? You know, do they have an arrow pointing to that way on the marking? Like you see a marking, what does it mean? Does it mean that this way is the tumah, that way is the tumah? Maybe what we're asking here is that maybe in between, around the trees, it was plowed, but that's not where the tumah was. Maybe it's still tummy. Maybe the trees are on the inside, and between the trees, it was plowed. The kever was on the outside. It wasn't plowed. It's matama ba'ayil. You just told me it's not matama ba'ayil. So the Gemara says, you have a point. You have a point, but that's not what we're talking about. Over here, we're talking about where the trees were along the border. Yeah, trees are along the border, so everything between the trees was plowed. That means that the tumah was plowed. Well, maybe the tumah was on the inside, but not between the trees. And the trees are on the outside. And the trees were never, and the tumah was never plowed over. And we just said that it's going to be tar because we think it's plowed. Gemara says, we're talking about that the trees are not in a row. The trees are all over the place. So obviously anything that's here was already plowed. Okay. We can have another pshat. We already said that since the area around the trees was marked off, and you told me that you don't make the markings distant from the tumah because we don't want to lose property in Eretz Yisrael just because, let's be strict, it has to be very, very close to the makam tumah, then it has to be that the grave was right there next to the trees. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said you can't just rely on the trees to make this determine if it was plowed and if it's mitam ba'il or not. You have to know that someone was there that tells you a story that yes, we plowed it, we didn't plow it. It has to be a zaken or a talmid. Amar Abaya says, based on what Rabbi Yehuda says, Shma mina tzuvr mirabanan dika b'masa. If there's a young yeshiva student in the town, kol mila demasa ale ramya. The whole town could fall on him. He has to be able to remember. He has to be mixed into every situation, because when there's a shaila comes up, who they're going to ask? They're going to ask this yeshiva bacher. Yeah, the shliach. Yeah, that if you remember, Shal Sechuvas Mimamakim. Remember such a sefer? There were 4 volumes of it. It was a rabbi. Was his name Ashri?
Yes.
Rabbi Ashri. He was a rabbi, a young rabbi in Kovna. And by the war, the Germans took away all the leadership. They came and they took away anyone that could, cause any sort of revolt or anything. Anyone that had, I think the doctors and the president of the community and the rabbis, they took everyone away. They just left. Anyway, he was a young person. He was on the Bezdin. He was left there. And he has crazy shilas that were coming to him. And he's writing like the whole responsibility of everyone just fell on him. After the war, he wrote it. He wrote up the questions that he had, and he researched more and he put it together. He explained why he answered. Very sad book. It's like Tisha B'Av reading, but it's very scholarly. Okay, so that's what Abai is saying. You never know. It could be all the issues of the city could fall on this young this yeshiva bacher. Amar Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, "Matzah Evan Mitzuyenes." If you find a stone that has this lime that's poured over it, in the Koran Talmud, they have a picture of the stone, or a similar stone. So what happens?
Excuse me, the book that you referred to, is that in English?
Right here.
There is actually a sample of Shalosh Tshuvos Memakim in English, not the whole thing, but someone had the Yad Vashem published a sample of it, just like a few questions. So, Tachtei Tamei, under that stone is Tamei. We have a problem over here because you told me before that you're not supposed to put it directly under. By the time you get to it, it's Tumah. So the answer to that is that if it's high, Rashi mentions this, that if it's high, then it could be directly under it. If it's on the ground, you can't put the lime directly on the ground, directly over the tumah. But if it's on a pole or if it's on a stone, so then it could be direct because you can see it from a distance. You see, not to come close. There's a difference there. So tachtei tamei, shtayim. Let's say there's 2 stones. Im yesh sid beinayim. If the lime goes from stone to stone, so beinayim tamei. Then between them it's going to be tamei. Im ein sid beinayim. If you don't have lime between them, then b'neim tar, then it's going to be tar. Yeah, what's this thing with they told the guy that if you see 1 headlight, then it's a motorcycle. See 2 headlights, it's a car. He says, I thought it was 2 motorcycles. Yeah, so here, how does this work? If you find 2 stones, so is that 2 tumah, or is that the whole area in between is? So if there's a line that goes between, so then there's tumah between them also. And even though you don't see that it's plowed, what that would mean I would have thought it would have been the other way. It's only if there's leka chayrish, because maybe if it's plowed, maybe that's what happened to the lime. The lime disappeared because it was plowed, and maybe there's still tumah between them. Why is it B'nayim Tahar Afagav Deleka Chayrish? What do you have in the translation there? Even though it's not plowed?
There is evidence of plowing having taken the place between them. The air between two stones is ritually pure. If not, the air between them is ritually impure.
Now go back one paragraph. Afagav.
Mara asks, and is the air between them?
That's a
being
question.
ritually pure?
That's a question. Okay, good. Good. You have to read it as a question.
Oh.
Yeah. You have a pencil? The Gemara says, V'afagav deleka chayrish. Yeah. And even if it's not plowed, you're gonna say that it's gonna be tahar. But we have a brisa. Matze even achas mitzuyenes. If you find one stone, and on the stone is the lime, so tachteh tame. So far, so good. Shtayim, if there's two stones, im yesh chayrish beinayim, if there's plowing between the two stones, so then beinayim tar. Then between them is going to be tar. Vim lav, but if there's no plowing between them, then beinayim tame. Then between them is going to be tame. Now over here it's saying that if you don't see the line between the stones,
The line indicates that there has been plowing. I suppose, no? I mean,
1 second, let me see what this is. Yeshid b'nayim tamei. Okay.
one found a single marked stone. This indicates that the ground underneath it is tame.
I'm not sure if the lime is going along the ground or if the lime is going just on this in the inner side of the stone. There's no line between the stones, so then that area is tar. So what does it have to do with being plowed? We say that it's only going to be tar if it was plowed over there. No plowable.
I thought it was the other way around.
Oh, maybe it works like this. If you do find lime between the stones, so then that could be because it's plowed and it's still tar. That's the opposite. I think that's going to be the pshat.
Yeah.
So
here it says the reason according to the Gemara's current understanding is as follows: since it is not known with certainty that there was ever tuma between the stones, and even if there was once tuma, it may have been scattered by the plowing. We assume that the area is tahor. Alternatively, we assume that the person who plowed the area knew that there was no tuma there, according to Rashi.
So that's telling me that if there's no lime, then I also need to know that there was plowed in order to be tar.
If you see that it's plowed between the two stones, then you're assuming that whoever plowed it had knowledge that it was tar, no, and that's why he plowed it, and therefore you can go based on that because you don't have a definitive evidence that it wasn't.
Is that referring to when there is lime between the stones or when there's no lime between the stones? Probably when there's no lime between. So no lime, like you were saying, no lime plus plowed would make it tar. So the problem is that now we have one brisa that says only if it's plowed.
No, but if it goes back, תחתי הטמא, שתיים, אם יש חורש ביניהם. So the time it has to be to the, it's also ever mitzuyetet, that they're
First
both
brisa,
marked.
I understand. The first brisa says, if there's sid beinayim, it's tamei, and if there's no sid beinayim, then it's tahar. There's no line between it, then it's tahar. Now we say, but what about the plowing? We have another brisa that says if there's plowing between it, it's tahar. So is it dependent on the sid, or is it dependent on the plowing? I guess that's the Gemara's question.
Is it the sid that's in between them? Because I'm reading it as though that each of the stones are marked with a sid, but there's no sid in between them, and the reason there's no sid between them because the area between them is plowed. So by the time the area between them is plowed, you're not going to see the sid. But where do you see the sid? You see it on the stones because the stones are actually holding on to it, and they are mitzuyenet.
Okay. So let's look at the Gemara's answer, then we'll go back, we'll see. Rav Papa answers because one brisa tells me that it's tar if there's no sid between them. The other brisa says that it's tar if it's plowed. Amar Rav Papa hacha keshasid shafach al rishayim u'merud lakan. The plaster, the lime was poured over the tops of the stones, and it's flowing down the sides. If there was plowing between them, then beinayim tar will say that between them is tar. The Eimer will say machmas chayreshu the ikbil. Will say that where is the why is the lime over here looking? It looks like there's lime here. That's because of the plowing. The plowing pushed it in. But if there's no plowing, then sid the beini beinihu. Then that lime that's in the middle, that's because it was placed there, and it was placed there. Why? Because of. So in other words, sid in between the stones, line between the stones is only tamei if there was plowing there.
Right.
If there was no plowing there, then we say that it was properly placed, that it was there for a reason. If it wasn't plowed, sid the beni beni v'tamei. So afal gav the leka chayreish. That was the Gemara's question before. Im sid b'neim tamei. Only if it's leka chayreish. Otherwise, it would be tar. That's what it looks like. Yeah. Okay, Amar Rabasi. Rabasi says, if there's one border of the area has lime on it, so who tami? That's the whole thing. That's the only place that tam is. Shnayim, let's say there's two borders that have tumah there. Well, it's still only two locations of tumah. Shleisha, let's say now you have three areas that have it's still only those three areas have tumah underneath it. Arba, so you have four areas. That's a different story. Hein tahirin, then under the lime itself is tar. And the entire field is tamei because they were marking off the outside.
That's what I was checking. Yeah, that's what. So you could just do that on a Sunday boch.
Yeah, we could have done that test. Yeah. That's probably what it says. You're supposed to do that test. Damar Mar, it was taught before. Ein marchikin, the master taught ein marchikin same makom tumah shleila hafsid. You're not supposed to make it very far away. You're supposed to be close, very close, so you don't lose land in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, then it said v'yetzin afal kalayim on Cholamay. They would also go out to check if there were forbidden mixtures growing. Kalayim b'chol shamayid nafkina, and the Gemara challenges. They would go out on Cholamay to check on the kalayim. But we have a contradiction. They actually went out during the month of Adar to check on kalayim. That was your thinking? Oh, you asked this. B'echad ba'adar. He wants a trophy. A cinnamon bun. On the first of Adar, they announce that people have to give the half a shekel, and they also tell the people they have to check your fields. On the 15th of Adar, Karnas and Megillah, Bekrachim, that's on Shushan, in the cities, walled cities, they read the Megillah. They also go out to make sure there's no thorns on the roads. People are going to be on the regal soon. Also to fix the roads. They also have to measure the mikveh to make sure that it has 40 saw. They do all the needs of the community. They mark off the graves. Maybe there's a grave that wasn't marked, or maybe the lime is coming off or something. And they also go out to check on the kalayim, on the forbidden mixtures that are growing in the vineyards. So we have a problem here. Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. We have a teretz from Rabbi Lazar and from Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. These are two Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. I think Rabbi Lazar was a little later than Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Actually, I don't know that. I don't know. Chad Amar, one of them answered, Kan bebacher, kan be'afel. They had to go twice. Depends. They had early growths and later growths. Not everything, a bacher is like a bachar. He grows early. So that was in Adar. And the afil is the later one. It's a late bloomer. So they would have to check on that during Cholamayid. Chad Amar, one of them says, Kan bezraim, kan b'yirakas. It depends if it's grain or vegetables. Zraim is seeds, but that's grain, because grains, we eat the seeds. Vegetables is we don't eat the seeds. Or maybe you eat the seeds also. But it's not that the whole food is the seed. So, and those grow later. So you would check on it on Cholamayid. Amar Abasim Rabbi Yochanan Leishanu Ala Shei Nitzin Nikar, Aval Nitzin Nikar Yitzin Aleim. This is only talking about where it wasn't recognizable by the blossom what it was. But if it was already recognizable by the blossom, in other words, you see something coming out of the ground, but you don't know if it's a cucumber or a grapevine. Why did they go on Cholamayid? Why can't they go another time? Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Schar Payale the Musli Gaban. We're looking for cheap workers. And on Cholamayid, no one's working. So we get cheap workers to go out on Cholamayid. Now I know who's paying for this. The government. It's the Chumas Alishka.
These are undocumented workers, the cheap ones.
Undocumented. So this is because they're getting paid from the Beis Hamikdash fund. And so that's why if they would just put the bill on the people that owned it, that owned the house, that owned the field, and say you pay, the guy had to pull out your kalayim, you have to pay for it, then they wouldn't have minded to charge him a lot. Doesn't have to be Cholamayid. But because it's coming from the temple treasury, whatever it is, they would charge the homeowner. It must be that they're charging the workers are getting paid by the temple. Vad kama. Yeah.
Why? It's not based on the problem. It's your problem. What are they doing it for the benefit of
You'll see towards the end.
Nothing going on in Cuomo those days.
Vad kama. How much it has to be removed? Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak Kaiser Shashanina. We actually have a Mishnah that discusses this. Kol sa sheyesh baroiva zera mimin acher yimaya. If there's a saw, which is the size of 144 eggs, that's a saw of grain that's planted, and you find a kav, reiva kav, quarter of a kav. A kav I think is 24. Reiva kav would be 6, the size of 6 eggs. So then, which is 1/24 of 144. So then you have to diminish it. 6 and 144 is too much. You have to pull it out. But we have a brisa that says different. Here you're telling me Yemayat that you pull it out. Another brisa says that they would declare the whole field ownerless. The guy would lose everything in his field. That's a little bit of a more harsh consequence. Where it says like kasha, there's no question. It depends when this was taking place. They made a decree in middle where they switched the punishment, the sentencing. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. We did learn this in Shkalim. We had this. Marishayna, originally, they would take the forbidden grain and they would throw it in front of the guy's animals. Vayabalabatim smechem. Shtei simches. Smachis. He would rejoice twice. Achas shemenachshin lehem sadisem. First of all, they had people from the Bezdin that would come that would weed his field. Va'achas shemashlichem lehem hemtam. And people from the Bezdin were coming to serve his animals food. They would take the weeds out and serve it to his animals had to eat. It was great. They said, no, we're not feeding it to your animals. We're going to get it lost. It's going to go into the streets. But Menachem said the same. They still were rejoicing. They're still taking the things out of the field. So they said, no, we can't do this anymore. The whole field is hefker. Okay, let's leave it over here.